It's week 8. So that leaves us with very little time left. So I want to make sure that this video is helpful, of course, and please let me know if there's confusion about it. You can either email me, you can comment upon this email, or I'm sorry, this announcement if needed. So feedback is always helpful. And speaking of feedback, one thing I have noticed, several of you are participating on in Mural on a Monday. And the reason I would like to advise against that is that as things get complicated for both me and many of you in terms of your schedules, Monday is the last day in which to participate, which means that it's unlikely, and I'm trying to move on to the next week, but it is unlikely that I can give you the kind of feedback that might be needed because most of my feedback requires you to do something. So when you don't have time to do the thing that I mention, it leaves it to the next week, which is now this week. This is the end of this particular set of goals. A few things I noticed as people shared, and I will give you, again, more hints. One great thing is, boy, Figma's doing a great job here. Look how they do a thumbnail of your work. Oh, boy, I love that company. That's pretty fancy, which you will find later is part of the entire journey that we have gone through of why we tag things in particular ways, why we use particular language. It all wraps up into things like this, making things easily shareable and usable outside of the context that you might be using it in. That's where database structures are so powerful. Like you don't have to, you can use them for varieties of purposes. Pretty cool. But I seem to remember making this statement to many of you, so I'm going to make it again. The goal for this week is to show those 3 records. Show me what they look like. You did the HTML way back when. So what does it look like visually? That means I'm guessing there might be some groups and there might be some headers. So that was one part. Number 2, you talked about taxonomies and the way you use your data to filter or sort, right? So there might be sort by ideas, sort by date created, sort by cost, sort by, anyway, those are interesting ideas that you did explore in week 5. And then in week 6, you talked about getting around in a more controlled manner. That might be this very top of the screen here. These are words, and over here might be words. So what I've noticed a bit is that people are going on their own sometimes, I guess is my feeling. Like you should all start to see that, boy, actually, the more you look at these, the more similar they start to look. That is the hope. They should start to look all fairly similar because in a way, you're solving the same problem in a UX manner that we have solved. So that's kind of nifty. That means, again, don't feel like you're on your own. There's plenty of patterns out there. However, the words all change. That's all. Then you might have realized, wow, I guess, in terms of this business of being an information architect, it has a lot to do with the words I choose. Yeah, I want you to realize that. And maybe it has to be something you realize by doing, which is perfectly fine in this class. Sometimes you have to do something to really find that revelation. Sometimes you have to do it wrong. You have to make mistakes in order to realize. That's perfectly fine too. So, just to wrap up this week, we also talked very briefly about what is clickable, and that was on purpose because next week you're going to be clicking on things. And that on things actually requires a little bit of what you've already done, which is to put things in particular places. Remember, we're not using any colors or any other indicators here, but sometimes you need to click into something. So one thing I think you guys might start to explore is very common is like a detail view. That means you're going to click into something, then you need to get back. So this week we're going to talk about this other part of information architecture that just goes all the way back to when we started, which is to get, how do you not get lost? Remember, a lot of this actually will go back, take us all the way back to the beginning. In fact, many of you noted after watching McManus's video about these containers. Like, what do these containers look like? And you're definitely going to get there in about a week. The other thing everyone probably wanted to explore is called metadata. That's, I keep saying, is coming up. It is actually not week 8, it's week 9, so I got it wrong. But this week is called storyboarding. And so you're still going to continue to work in the same place. If you're working in Figma, it's going to be easy. You're going to paste your Figma link in here. It's working so well to actually go into Figma. I can go in there and make comments. You all can go into Figma and take a look. Remember, the hope here is that many of you might be familiar with or comfortable with some of the conventions of these design patterns, right? So we're talking about navigation. Navigation usually goes on the top, maybe the side, maybe there's 2 layers of navigation. And when you use that, you can also click on things inside like your records themselves. So you're still going to be marking up 3 records, but what you're going to do is to illustrate a journey. And often we call this flow. And the flow is for the architect yourself to demonstrate how effective your choices were in both words and navigation. So to be clear, again, I'm really still looking at words, right? Words need to convey some value, and right now we don't want that value to revolve around something like buying something because or searching for something. It's really more exploring and understanding your topic, finding something of interest in your database, much like you've been trying to do. So you'll want ways to sort things and filter things and to look into details and to come back. So this is a sort of a narrative, so to speak. And one way I found that's very helpful, certainly you can please start, let's just go right there. Please start with the module, because that's going to kind of introduce this topic in a more thorough way than I'm doing in the video. But I like this shorthand. I think it's an exercise here of just being able to, just like the sitemap, you can work at a high level and see some things. I know you guys aren't completely used to reading sitemaps, but once you get to the detail level, which is the page that we were working on last week, maybe you want to show how to get to that. You might want to start with what's called a home page. I'm not particularly interested in a page that isn't based on your data, so you could just start from one of your topics. You might want to change to another topic. And what I'm really interested in seeing is how does the data change as you move around and click on these different items. So this little see-do flow to me is just a kind of an easy to read way. Please use it more so than there's another way which has a lot of boxes and things. This one's just a little bit cleaner. It also works just on a piece of paper to think through several steps of clicking on your words, and then when you get to the next page or you click on a detail, how do you get forwards and backwards so someone can explore your data. So that's it for this week. Pretty blank, right? So there's see-do flows here, which can be written on a piece of paper and taken a picture of, thrown in here. It can also be put into your mural if you want to do it. Mural's got some tools that might be able to help you, but again, there's no fidelity needed for this other than legibility. And also remember, words. What I'm really looking at is you probably will all have a similar, what we'll call flow, which is someone will come in, they'll select an item at the top of the screen, something will display, they'll change that display in some ways to suit the options you've given them. Then they might look at a detail of one record if that's the case. Some records, you don't want to show everything. So you might, look into and see more. And then you want to get back, and that's basically it. Maybe then select another thing. And all throughout that, your data is going to reflect those choices. And that's what this idea is of a storyboard. And that's week 8. And as I said, look forward to week 9, where we start to get data about all the things they clicked on. So just to let you know, you're still building and building and building, but anytime someone clicks on something on the web, you get data about that. And that's called metadata. And that can be used in so many different ways. We don't have to deal with this in your example, but one thing is about rating something, or some activity somebody does on your data becomes data that you can then use, and that'll be, again, the subject of the final paper, which is going to be due in 2 weeks, which is where you're going to think all these things that you've seen, and you're going to look at one of the more data-driven sites. You're going to pick one, And these data-driven sites are actually something where the data is provided by you and it is organized by you. And that's what's interesting, is how do you remove the information, well, not to remove it, but how do you understand the information architecture of these very, very popular sites? So, little preview, and I know it's a little much to go through, but hopefully start your week off. Please ask questions in this on this announcement, or just start here and ask questions, or share again your work in Figma or wherever you are working. Have a great week.